My review of this production is 2 words. Wow. Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my Stagey YouTube channel. If you are meeting me for the first time, hello! My name is MickeyJo and I am obsessed with all things theatre. I am a British theatre critic currently staying here in New York. I'm in my hotel room right now and I've been having a fantastic time. Today I'm going to be bringing you a full video review of one of the shows that I travelled over here to see, which was Hercules at the Paper Mill Playhouse in New Jersey. So this isn't actually in New York, but it is only a very short train ride away. The Paper Mill Playhouse being a fantastic regional theatre. It's where Newsies was first produced by Disney, and now where Hercules has been playing. At the time of recording this, it has already closed. However, I do believe there are plans to take the production to Germany. So needless to say, we were very excited about Hercules, and when we found out that it was going to be finishing its run just before we had planned to come to New York, we changed our dates, I changed our flights to make sure that we would be able to catch a performance. And I'm very glad that we did. It was fantastic to be able to go to Paper Mill. It was great to be able to see a brand new Disney musical happening on stage. Normally in the West End, we are not the first people to get to see these shows, so that was a really exciting experience. But did Hercules work on stage? This is the question I know you all want the answer to, and we're going to talk about it today. A lot. There are so many things to say. There are so many things. If you enjoyed today's review video, make sure to subscribe to my Stagey YouTube channel. I review so many shows in the West End, and I'm going to be reviewing so many here in New York as well. Also, very often when I see a show, I will put up my first impressions, thoughts, just a little unedited preview of what the review is going to be for my YouTube members. So they already have an inkling as to what I'm going to say in this video. If you want to become one of those exclusive members, click on the link in the description and you can sign up for just £2.99 a month. Okie dokie, now let's talk about Hercules. So a Hercules stage musical is something that people have wanted for a really long time, predominantly on the strength of the score, and we love to see Greek mythology adapted for the stage. And with these songs, it feels already very inherently theatrical. How could this not work? I am going to explain to you today why, unfortunately, this production itself did not work. And it has a lot to do with the trajectory of the show. So I want to give you a little bit of context first of all. This is not Disney producing Hercules to be the next big Disney musical on Broadway. It is not being produced with the same plans as Frozen was, or as The Little Mermaid, or The Lion King, or any of these big Disney theatrical shows that have gone on to have global success. Hercules is being produced for a similar reason that Newsies was first produced. It was so that the show could subsequently be licensed and they could make money licensing the shows to schools and amateur theatre companies, as well as international productions. Now Newsies became a surprise success and the rest is history. For this production of Hercules, it super doesn't feel like they're going to have the same level of unprecedented response. I think maybe they were a little bit surprised by how many people were interested in the show, but certainly it has not been built for that same level of success. It just hasn't had the same kind of investment, which is disappointing because this source material could be so great. So it's not that this show is awful and irredeemably bad, it's just that it falls short of what it so easily could have been. Critics in the US don't do star ratings, so I'm not going to reduce this to a simple star rating, but all in all, I have to acknowledge that I was disappointed by this. At the same time, my expectations were set very low by hearing thoughts of a couple of people who had seen it before, so I didn't hate it, I didn't have an abominable time, but there were just enough things that annoyed me about the show. Let me tell you a little bit about how they adapt this for stage, and then I can explain why it falls short of its potential. So putting any animated film onto the stage is a little bit unruly to begin with, but Hercules is also very fantastical, and you have these gods, and you have Mount Olympus as a location, and you have these giant titans, and you have a flying horse and mythological creatures, and fights with giant monsters and feats of great strength. And, you know, there are challenges presented within that. Mostly when we see the Muse characters, they are depicted within paintings and within ceramic vases, and they appear as statues. Like, we're not going to be able to recreate that faithfully in the same way that something like My Neighbor Totoro recreates on stage. That being said, the fact that Totoro does manage to capture animation and so exactly recreate it is kind of an indictment on Hercules' limited imagination. So we do things to make it work on stage. The gods are costumed in this bright and colourful way. We have set pieces to suggest Mount Olympus. There's no flying or anything like that. Pegasus as a character is completely cut, which is disappointing, especially because we've just had Sven in Frozen, and it kind of feels like you could really easily do Pegasus, even if he doesn't fly, even to just have like a baby Pegasus puppet. I think there's one reference in the script to a winged horse, which is kind of like a nod to Pegasus, but the fact they don't do Pegasus, it's disappointing, and it's where the heart of the show begins to get a little bit lost. And it also tells you that they're not really thinking about the long game, because if they were planning to bring this to Broadway, they would absolutely be including Pegasus so that they can merchandise Pegasus. That would be where they would be selling all of the merch. Similarly, Philoctetes, Hercules' trainer, is now no longer a mythological creature. I believe he was a satyr. I think he was a satyr. In the film, he is now just a dude in a tracksuit. And it's this kind of, like, diminishing of the Disney magic of it all that makes it feel just a little bit less special. Hades' head is not literally on fire. He has a whole blue updo with a red streak, so we don't get the, like, Hades turning into red hot with anger. He casts a little bit of fire from his hands occasionally, but it's really disappointing compared with how the script prepares it when he's like, face my wrath. Bam! Small flame. Like, he could light someone's cigarette with his wrath, but that is about all he's going to do. He's not even going to activate a fire alarm with his wrath. We do have Pain and Panic, and I quite like the way they're costumed. I'm going to circle back to them because I think they're actually a highlight of the show. But equally, when they have their "we are worms, worthless worms," they don't turn into worms because they can't, because it's on the stage. We do have some really cool giant puppets for a couple of the monsters. We have the River Guardian and we have the Hydra with a couple of Hydra heads, and they look fantastic, but the way they are directed to enter the stage is weirdly disappointing because they just sort of saunter on quite casually. Like, sure, I'm going about my day, I've got multiple heads, and then they have these utterly disappointing fight scenes with Hercules where he's quite static, and it's choreographed in a semi-interesting way, but we don't feel a lot of threat or tension, it's just happening. For the most part, the narrative of the show remains the same, and much of the material is kept intact. When Hercules is adopted on Earth by mortal parents, it is just by a single mother, and he's raised with her and her aunt, whose name is Antithesis, which is a pun I have an awful lot of time for. But his dad is cut, his dad is gone, and we don't see Hercules wrecking the marketplace and the forum. It's implied that it happens, and we see the aftermath. We see the angry mob as a result. Those, from what I recall, are the major differences between the film and the stage show. The whole thing just generally feels very pantomime-esque, and that's not necessarily something that Americans will understand the comparison with because that's a very British concept, but it feels a little bit cheap. It feels as though it is pandering to a younger audience. It feels like they've looked for the easiest way of making Hercules happen, and they have just put it directly onto a stage. Let me talk a little bit more about some of the specific things that disappointed me about this production. So I think all in all, the direction is just a little bit unimaginative. We had so many scenes where people would just walk on. Say if you had a scene between three people would walk on, they'd play the scene, and then they'd leave. Like, there is no imagination to this direction. The whole ending sequence of the show, and there are going to be spoilers here, is bizarre, and the storytelling gets completely lost. So we have Hercules agreeing to strike a deal with Hades to forsake his strength. In exchange, Meg will not get hurt. We see Meg run off past the Titans, and then we're told that she died off stage. We lose that moment. They don't have the heart-to-heart. We don't have Meg sacrificing herself to save Hercules from a falling column. We're just told that she bravely tried to fight Hades, and then he presumably killed her with his very small flame hands. We do see Hercules then go and save Meg, but I don't know that we understand as an audience that he is risking his life in order to do that, and that's so important because that's his huge act of heroism. We have to believe that he is willing to sacrifice everything in order to save her, because that is the love that he has for her, and it super just feels like he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go in and bring her out and everything's gonna be fine. Like, we need to know that he understands the threat here, but we don't understand the threat there as an audience because it's not explained well enough. There's dialogue to cover it, but it's just casually thrown in. It's Hades doing some exposition and saying, oh, but you're going to die if you do that. Oh, well, you're doing it now anyway. The other thing that annoys me about the ending, the Titans are vanquished by the people of Thebes, an ensemble of perhaps 12, who stand in a line and join hands and slowly walk upstage so that these two Titan puppet monsters who look exactly the same as each other just have to back up into the prison from whence they were released. These Titans who were going to conquer the entire world, like not just Thebes and not just Greece, like Hades has international scope here. They were going to conquer the entire world, but this ensemble of 12 was like, nah, because the power of community doth compel you. That was a strange and slightly frustrating storytelling point. Regrettably, that is not where my creative issues with the show end. I didn't love the choreography. I thought it had some good standout moments, and there were some good little choreographic solos that were high energy, but for the most part, I don't know if there is a connection between the choreography being the way it was and the fact that a handful of the up-tempo numbers had to be heavily slowed down. Gosh, far too slow. A couple of these songs were far too slow. Zero to Hero is on my running playlist. I know exactly how fast that song is. And nobody is going to be running the stage version of Zero to Hero when we get into that end section and it's bless my soul, Herc was on a roll, undefeated. Like, that's not nearly fast enough. We need bless my soul, Herc was on a roll, undefeated. We need high energy, we need kicking, we need gospel choreography. We did not get that. Similarly, Phil's song, One Last Hope, far too slow. The only song where I felt a real pulse of excitement and enthusiasm was a new song written for the Muses, which I believe was called Great Bolts of Thunder. That's the lyric they kept singing over and over again. That was great, and that had some energy to it. It was very like the Weather Girls. But as well as being too slow, I didn't like the keys of all of the songs. Specifically, A Star Is Born. The key of A Star Is Born was higher, and it meant we didn't get the melodic climb. A star is born, a star is born, What's thrilling about that melody is it climbs and it climbs and it climbs. And when they start higher, they have to then modify the melody on the next one and then come down the octave slightly awkwardly. Not their fault, it's how the music has been arranged and orchestrated. I also felt, while we're talking about the Muse songs, because these are the most important songs in the show, not from a character development perspective, obviously, but like, this is what we love about the Hercules soundtrack, right? It's the Muses. They start off in harmony and they sound fantastic, but I do think the strength of the Muse numbers, as Alan Menken originally wrote them, is to have them in unison and then to break out into these harmony moments at points throughout the song. Like we have the, and then along came Zeus and we're in unison, and then we go into the harmony bits after that and it's thrilling and it's really exciting. There were more problems with the Muses, and this was a real shame because when we were hearing that Hercules had disappointed people, we thought the Muses at least have to be good. It's so easy to put the Muses on stage, presumably, and yet they didn't really have discernible personalities. One of the great things about the Muses in the animated films, not only do they sound fantastic, but they have these relationships with each other. They have the sort of leader who scolds the other one, and they have the comic silly one, and then we have the dramatic one. Like, they have their own individual personalities, and that was lost completely in the stage version. They were performed very well, but this is how they have been directed. They have no individual character. They are all the same Muse, and they basically became the Supremes. They are also not staged whimsically, and I Won't Say I'm in Love is a great number, and you love the backing vocals on that number that the Muses do. Who'd you think you're kidding? He's the earth and heaven too. Like, you can't not love that. The way they were staged, they were in these red dresses and they were swishing them around for most of the song, and in the film they're like popping up in funny whimsical places, and even just like have them all appear behind pillars. There was no sense of comedy with the Muses. The Muses were not camp and whimsical, and I would have liked for them to be. They were literally just the Supremes. They're just swishing their dresses, being the Supremes, being ancient Greece dream girls. And that shows a limited imagination. That is very much a limited imagination. Some other new songs that were written for the stage production. Hades has a song called A Cool Day in Hell. I don't hate it. It's kind of like a soul number. that Sheila Hensley sounded really great on. I don't mind it. Hades obviously having a villain song is something I can get behind. I think that's a good addition to the score if we're going to put a new number in. There was one section where he had this repeated lyric, like the heart of the deal at the start of the deal is the part of the deal and the heart of the deal, and that, like, I think it happened 5 times. And by the end I'm like, I need you to say anything else. Like, we have stalled on this lyric, you're going in a circle, and I need you to escape this lyric. Like, Control-Alt-Delete out of this repeated rhyme. It was not good. Like, it was not a Cole Porter triple rhyme deliciousness. It was just odd. Another new song happens at the very start of the second act for Phil, and he is singing about how he's back, and he does 2 little reprises of it on the end, Sit Down, You're Rockin' the Boat style, where it ends, it's like, oh, you want some more? And I can't speak for the entire audience, but personally, I could have taken it or left it. I did not need 2 reprises at the end, and I don't think the reaction in the theatre was like euphoric enough to justify that. It was strange for that number to be staged with him to have no backing behind him, just him putting across this number. He didn't really feel like Phil. He's another one whose character has been really diminished in this version, not unlike the Muses. He's not this curmudgeonly goat anymore, who is still holding on to this dream but doesn't really want to believe it's possible. He's just a trainer who runs like a jazz bar. He has Phil's soul spot and he wears a velour tracksuit, and it's a strange characterization. He feels just like James Monroe Iglehart as the genie as Phil. So that brings me pretty nicely to talking about the cast of the show. So let me tell you about the standout performances. So I was just talking about James Monroe Iglehart, and he's a great fit for a Disney show. What made him so great as the genie? He can still engage with an audience, and he still finds this really fun balance of bringing something very new and very vibrant to Disney material while still understanding the tone of the whole thing. I do just think that he wasn't given much of a great character to work with here. He was attached to the first production of this when it was done previously at the Delacorte Theater in Central Park, over there. And he's now playing the role again. I don't think he is the issue here so much as it's just a heavily diminished character. And when it was so characterful in the film with Danny DeVito voicing, it feels compromised. Bradley Gibson is playing the titular role of Hercules. I think he's really good. They've taken it in a very specific juvenile direction. He plays it very young and dorky and a little bit foolish, but I feel like that works for Hercules and the kind of journey that he has. It's hard to recreate the sort of whimsical character that he is in the film on stage because it's a little bit vague, and I think for stage we need something more of a slightly more real person. So I get why they've made this choice, and I think Bradley Gibson does it very well. You know, he's believably brash and arrogant, and then sad when he finds out that the fame that he has achieved is not enough to propel him to god status. Like, he does just feel like a moody teenager. Isabel McCalla plays Meg, a very similar characterization to the film, but even like a little bit more like feminist and impassioned. I like the way that she plays Meg in this. I wish the material gave her and Bradley as Hercules more capacity in which to believably fall for each other, because so much of their relationship is put off until the scene where she is meant to go in the second act and go and find out what his weakness is. And because that's the first time we're seeing them sort of really meaningfully interact, and we haven't seen her beginning to be won over by him prior to that and sort of being conflicted about it, it doesn't feel particularly genuine because she's going into that scene with a plan, and I don't know that we trust her as an audience to believe the chemistry between the two. I want to tell you about my standout performers from this production, who were Reggie DeLeon and Jeff Blumenkrantz as Pain and Panic, respectively. I thought they were fantastic, and I really enjoyed their material. I thought they had great material to work with. It was stupid jokes, let me tell you. I mean, it was the dumbest jokes, but I liked them. I have no issue with a terrible, terrible pun, and I don't see why that's a deal breaker in like a Disney show. It didn't feel juvenile, it just felt like, oh, that's like dumb. And it's all ancient Greece pun humor, basically. They were playing rock, paper, scissors at one point, and I think they called it rock, papyrus, Caesar, and there was just stuff like that throughout. But they had a great dynamic with each other, they had a great dynamic with Hades, and they were so recognizable as their characters from the film. They did a great job in being these Broadway character actors who recreated an animated character for a stage production. I also really enjoyed Sheila Hensley as Hades. Now, I was very intrigued about this because Roger Bart played this role at the first version of the premiere production of the show previously at the Delacorte, and Sheila Hensley and Roger Bart feel like very different performers to me. Sheila Hensley has played Judd Fry in Oklahoma to tremendous award-winning acclaim, and he played Frankenstein's monster in Young Frankenstein and various other things, and I think he's been Sweeney Todd, and an illustrious career has Sheila Hensley had. I really like him as Hades. I think he is contending with the script reducing him to this slightly infantilized, ridiculous villain, and I wish he could have a little bit more menace. And it's definitely a step away from the James Woods voiced Hades from the animated film, but I feel like he finds ways to make it work. I enjoy his performance as Hades. I also appreciate all of the muses. They sound fantastic. Tiffany Mann is probably the standout from this group to me, but you can't even necessarily tell from the staging and the way they're presented that she is meant to be the leader. She is playing that role from the film. Calliope is the name of that muse. But again, I just really wish that they had personalities. They sound fantastic, they look fantastic, and that's all there is to it. Let me tell you a couple more positives to do with this production, because like I said, I didn't really hate it, it just fell short of my expectations and it was disappointing when you think about the source material. But there were some fun moments. Bradley's Go the Distance did exactly what it needed to do. Isabel delivered I Won't Say I'm in Love in such a well-sung and a well-characterized way as Meg, and the highlight moments were probably still the Muses numbers because they sound so fantastic. Like, Alan Menken's writing for this is so inherently theatrical and it's so great for the stage, and it's so galvanizing and exciting and thrilling that it disappoints you when the show and how they've adapted that material doesn't live up to the brilliance of its composition. But those have been my thoughts about Hercules at Paper Mill Playhouse. If you were lucky enough to see this production while it was running in Milburn, New Jersey, let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'm not sure exactly when this one's going out, but there will be many more reviews of Broadway shows that I've seen while I'm here in New York coming to my channel, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss those. And if you want to see my thoughts about the shows before everyone else, make sure you join as one of my exclusive members at the link in the description, £2.99 a month. Thank you so much. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day.
For 10 more seconds, I'm MickeyJoTheatre. Oh my god, hey, thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!